All right. Okay, so can everybody see this okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, excellent. I better turn up my volume because I'm not hearing so good. So as I mentioned, this is Life IQ Living Week 1. And the idea here is to set a strong foundation for hope and stability. So some thoughts before we jump into the tracker and some of the pieces. In order to navigate life successfully, each of us have to have a strong foundation by tending to self-care. And self-care can be defined a lot of different ways. I realize that. One of the things that I thought about and look at from based on coaching now for, gosh, 18 years, is three things that seem very core to all of us and any of us to try to move forward and have success in life. And that is, we need to have a healthy body, physical health, in other words, healthy mind or mindset, and spiritual health. And we can have other kinds of healths that we can add into here. We can talk about relationships. We can certainly talk about career or business. We can talk about community, a number of other things that could go into this area. But what I've distilled it down, or at least believe and focus on, is this idea that if we don't have good physical health, mental mindset health, and spiritual health, we're not going to have a strong and successful life, and we're going to have a challenge navigating life. And for those of us, and I raise my hand as one who focus mostly on showing up and what I do when I show up. So task oriented, this is what I do. This is me getting it done, which is where my wiring is, but not so much on how I show up. So the idea here isn't just what I'm doing when I show up, but how I also show up in the navigation of life and in what I'm doing. The process, as it says, is incredibly personal. In other words, guidelines, ideas, examples are shared, but each of us have to actively engage in this life IQ living and learn what works and what doesn't work for us. And that's like coaching, right? So if you go into coaching and you're having a coaching conversation, you can share and there's ideas, guidelines, examples, but people have to interact with them. They have to try them on, see what works for them. And the intentionality is the key to this. So scripture from 1 Corinthians 9, 25, 26, all athletes are disciplined in their training. They do it to win a prize that will fade away, but we do it for an eternal prize. So I run with purpose in every step. I am not just shadow boxing. I love that picture and that illustration. Great metaphor is running the race. They have to be disciplined. We have to be disciplined in our training. The prize that we're looking for is an eternal prize, and I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. It's not a temporary thing. We're not trying to just win a game or win the game of life. We're trying to have that prize and those crowns, as scripture calls them, that are eternal. And so there's this purposeful running that we have to do. So thinking about life as a river. So we have to learn the rhythms of life. So if you think about life as a river, and this illustration was taken from, and I'll be sharing it from the Coactive Coaching book. Think about different geographies along the way of the water that affect the water flow. So some parts of the river are going to have rapids, and then there'll be other parts that have waterfalls on them. Some parts of river will be tranquil. Sometimes there'll be eddies, swamps, etc. And so if we think about our life this way, we're going to have a similar kind of experience. There's there's going to be times like now when perhaps there's rapids or even a waterfall. There may be other times, maybe this time last year, life was tranquil and it was very peaceful. Maybe you were stuck somewhere, or maybe you feel stuck now. So however you are, the second point, you may not be able to change the situation or circumstance you find yourself in, because you can only be where you are on the river, or if you want to use the idea path. But it's how we show up at this time, in this place, on the river, which is going to impact how we fully live the experience of life. So thinking about this source of joy, there's two kinds of joys in this scripture. Psalm 4:7 says, "You have given me greater joy than those who have abundant harvests of grain and new wine." If you look at that, you can see there's inward joy that comes from knowing and trusting God, and happiness that comes as a result of pleasant circumstances. Inward joy is steady as long as we trust God. Happiness is unpredictable since our circumstances are always changing. Inward joy defeats discouragement, and happiness covers it up. Inward joy is lasting, happiness is temporary. So thinking about the source of our joy and life for us, is it going to be based on our circumstances, where we happen to be on the river, or is it going to be based on something more lasting? So going back to the contrast of these different places on the river, and if you feel comfortable sharing, I'd love to hear from some of you. Where would you say, what would you say your place on the river looks like right now? So we got some ideas here, and you can pick something else if you don't like these. Rapids, waterfall, tranquil, eddies, a swamp. What would you say?
I would probably say waterfall.
Okay, waterfall. Yep, can understand. I assume that has something to do with the coronavirus, or is it something different?
No, it's more, there are personal circumstances. So generally I'm filled with joy. That inner peace, that's good. But there are exterior circumstances that it's almost like working around it, not wanting to approach it for fear of it overtaking me, drowning me, but knowing that it's there.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Lori. Who else? Where do you see yourself on the river?
I would say, Michael, that I see myself, interestingly enough, tranquil. This whole slowing down of life has really helped me to now really do some focusing and kind of what I want, look at my life and what I'm doing, and I have the space and the time to do that. So this has been really tranquil for me to do some deep inward looking and just knowing that I'm in the right space. So for me, it's been a tranquil time.
That's great, Errol. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Very good. And one more. Anybody else want to share?
I've just come off of level 5 rapids, down a waterfall, and I'm clearing the foam in a tranquil section of the river.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, David. Yeah, thank you for sharing. So it's amazing just in this call how many different people are in different places on this river, right? So we can't assume where we're at. All right, so jump over. So thinking about what we're going to call the benefits of life IQ living. So, one of the benefits of this is it guards us, it guards me, it guards us from what we call addictive behaviors to bring the joy or peace, happiness, fulfillment that we might be looking for from life. One of the things when we look at our lives is we look to see, okay, where am I honoring what are the needs or values in my life and the things that are feeding my soul. and making sure that we're doing these in God-honoring ways. And so by engaging in this type of an approach to life, it helps us to be careful not to do things in a way that's going to be, and I use this word addictive. It's not necessarily it's some illegal addiction of some sort. It's just it's in a way that's not necessarily leading you towards life, and it's numbing you some. And I'll share examples in my own life how I've seen this. These are not found from my circumstances or the circumstance I'm in, but intentional living, again, starting with my relationship with God. So here's a testimony of one person who's gone through this process with me. They said this. John says, I can find myself striving as I live life. I want to control situations, how people show up, the outcome. I want comfortable, not the discomfort. Life is messy and I have a choice to rest in God or strive in trying to control. If I rest, I have joy and peace. If I try to control, I feel anxious. It's a daily decision. I must choose to rest in the Lord each day, moment by moment. I can't live tomorrow or next week. I can only live one day at a time and receive the grace of God for this day. So as you think about what John's sharing here, what your experience, what would you say you notice as far as this type of being comfortable with discomfort, learning to live with the questions, the messiness of life? How are you faring with that right now? How's that going for you? Just a couple of folks respond.
Michael, I think in this time that I'm in, I'm actually doing very well with it. I had a period of time where I went through some really, really hard things. And through that time, I learned I don't have the answers, don't have control, and I can trust God. So during the things that's happening all around me right now with COVID-19 or just trying to manage life on a day-to-day basis and manage it in a godly way, I think I'm doing really well in accepting those things that I don't have control and that God has control. But I can do some things to move forward. I can plan for what's ahead, even though I can't implement now. And so I feel like that's a real blessing for me.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Carol. Thank you for sharing that. That's good. Who else?
This is Beverly. I feel like I'm in a tranquil state and had the benefit of still having my job and being able to do a lot of what I've always done, just doing it from home. Yet I have an aunt that's not expected to live much longer with COVID-19 and have a number of friends who have lost their family members due to COVID-19. So I'm keenly aware that tomorrow's not promised, that my priorities need to be straight, that I need to handle the most important things of life in prayer and with patience, fully dependent upon God.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, Beverly. Yeah, and sorry to hear about your aunt. And it is a time of loss for many people, loss of freedoms. I think one of the things, I was watching a report just talking about how long people have been living now with restricted freedoms and quarantine and all that. And I think folks are getting antsy. People are wanting to get out and begin to be able to do something. And I don't know that means crowd a stadium or crowd a restaurant in any way, but I think it does mean there's this sense of wanting to move and get out. So there's this yearning and somewhat a little bit of anxiety that's going on in folks. Anybody relate to that experience for yourself? Wanting to at least get out and start doing some things back to what you would call your normal?
Absolutely. I've
Yeah,
been
good.
I've been scheduling like driveway visits with people so that I could be in the physical presence of another human being.
Very good. Yeah, driveway visits. Very creative. I think there's a lot of creativity going on for sure. Yeah, good. Thank you. All right. So uh, let's see. So to navigate the river of life, we will need to do some things like adapt, grow, respond with intentionality. So if we live on autopilot, we will end up doing the same things we have always done and not move beyond our present state. So even practices that once worked may need revisiting. So this is the thing with this is the sense of growing, adapting, responding, because what worked before is probably not going to work going forward in many ways. I think there's a book out there, "What got you here won't get you there," or something like that. But the idea is that we have to be learning and adapting to the life on the river and how life is coming. I don't think any of us have lived through a pandemic unless you are really, really old. And so I think for all of us, this is new, right? So there's no blueprint. We all are asking people for answers, and nobody has really the answer because nobody knows the future. So only God knows that. And so how it's all going to look, we have to learn to adapt. So autopilot living isn't really going to work. And again, this thought that even practices that may have once worked may need to be revisited if they aren't working anymore. So you have to be thinking about this and be intentional. So what I want to do is I want to share this template with you. The Life IQ Living
Michael,
tracker.
can I make a comment on that statement you just had up there earlier?
Sure. Yeah. I'm sorry, Errol. Go ahead. Yeah.
Excuse me. Because I think, and I guess as I'm seeing the statement, some thoughts coming for me. But this whole virus situation hasn't thrown me off all that badly as it has some people who want to go back. And I think, looking at your statement, maybe it had to do so much with living on autopilot that when things changed, it became very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't live on autopilot. I live intentionally each day. And so the change that came with all of this, I no longer go to the institution that I teach at and everything. I'm home. But I haven't had a day. I've been locked down since the 27th of March. I mean, locked down, not going out. I can't leave my property unless I'm going to the grocery store, the pharmacy, or the gas station. And I have been home, but I have not had a day where I've been frustrated about being home, because the earlier statement you said that I recognize what I could control and what I can't, because I don't live on autopilot. I could adjust and shift in this. So this has not been a frustrating experience to not have my routine, because my routine wasn't always just routine. It was a conscious routine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, and that's the really the crux of this this idea too. This Life IQ Living idea. Earl, thanks for sharing that. Jumping in.
Yeah.
So going to, and this is really going off of what Errol said. So it was a great tee up. This sense of the three areas, and I know people, and if you're interested, I'll be happy to send you the Word document of this, of picking these three areas. Now you can pick other areas if you want to say, hey, I want to do these three and add more, or mix them up, whatever you want to do. But I like to do things and keep it just practical in nature. So this thing of the Life IQ Living template is to help define what are the spiritual self-care I practice today, what's the emotional or mindset self-care I practice today, and then the physical body self-care I practiced, and then just putting things in these boxes to help represent that. Now this doesn't replace journaling or other things. This is really just meant to keep short notes, and then at the end You have the wins or the things that you're learning. And this goes to the course adjustments, things that you want to carry forward. And so looking at areas, and I was going to share some examples. So I might put for Sunday, attended church, or, before the COVID, or attended church online for Sunday, and then, include what I did in my quiet time, read a certain portion of scripture, or did some type of a prayer time, but just keeping short little notations and things in there. On the emotional mindset, it might record things. So I'm just looking at one of my ones before. I had a chance to watch my grandson. And so for me, that's a great thing for my mindset. So I put that down there anytime I can. I also put down reading particular books that are focused on mindset. One happened to be The Inner Game of Work that I was reading on this particular day. And so these are things that I put down there as the self-care that I practiced. And then the physical, one of the things that and I've shared this before, so with folks, one of the things I started last year was I wanted to, knowing I was going to have a grandson, I thought I need to get in better shape. And so I started doing some just simple exercises. And one of them was to do 1 sit-up and 1 push-up a day for 1 week. And so I started with 1, and then I added 2. So then the second week, 2 push-ups, 2 sit-ups. And now I'm up to 25 of each. So that's something that I try to practice each day. And I don't berate myself if I miss, or if I do, a certain amount less or whatever, but it's just a real way to push and to keep a good track. Going for walks. It could be what kind of food you're eating. So the physical self-care isn't just about exercise, it's also about what you're eating. And then at the end, I'll put in some wins. So I'll give you some examples of these. One of the things under the physical self-care is I need a day to change things up. I don't want to always do the same thing every day. So that's a learning that I did. The one under emotional, I need to keep a particular form in front of me so I can track my emotional mindset throughout the day. So that'll help me to track where my mind is, and then be able to speak truth to myself if I need to. And then under the spiritual, one of the things that I put down is it helps to have a focus in worship, or I'll find my mind gets distracted and wanders. So these are really just simple things that I made note of. And it's simple like that, right? So it's not a matter of trying to get it all figured out in 1 day or 1 week, but making these adjustments, staying on top of it. And I can tell you, living like this, and Errol, I think you communicated this well earlier, really has made a profound difference and has really helped. So what I want to do, and I want to invite you all to this, is starting next Tuesday, let's escape out of there, and I am going to share let me find it. Well, I thought I had it up. There it is. All right, so this was in the email that I sent out when I mentioned this, and it's also in the blog post that mentioned it. So I want to do is I'm going to try to just have a check-in time, and what we'll do is we'll focus on, how are you doing? Ideas that you might have that you bring to the conversation, and a form of accountability. So if you're wanting to do this kind of thing, this will give you a chance to do that. And whether we spend 15 minutes or 30 minutes, it'll stop at 30 minutes. but whatever the amount of time we need, and just talk about how things are going, what we're learning, and encourage one another over the next 4 weeks. So I'd love to have any and all of you who want to join this to jump in and be a part of it. As I said, I can send you the Word document of this if you want that. You'd have to email me and let me know. And you can change it up or do whatever you want to the form if you want to personalize it more. In fact, I think that there was actually a Word document version in my blog post as well, so you can get it right off of my website. But so we got about a minute or two left. So what kind of questions or thoughts or comments does this bring up for anyone? Love to hear from you all. I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this point, and would love to have some conversation. So what are you learning? How's this for you? What do you think about the idea?
Hey, Michael, I really like this idea. I think this is easy to use. It's really simple, it's personalized, and it definitely, like you were saying, 1 sit-up, 1 push-up, 2 sit-ups, 2 push-ups. It's something where we can start and just get in the habit, the discipline of doing this, and then we can expand on it from there. It really, in my mind, makes you more self-aware of intentionally what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I got that idea. It's funny because I was, Zig Ziglar, you all know his name. When he first started to exercise in his 40s, he said he was in such bad shape. His goal was to walk to the very next mailbox and then back home. And he added mailboxes, and eventually he added streets, and then eventually he was jogging. So yeah, so just start small and grow. Who else?
This is Beverly. I like that the end of the week where you take a look at your wins and what you learned, because so many times we focus just on what we didn't do, what our failures were.
Right.
And I think really focusing in on what we learned and what we did well will provide momentum and motivation to keep going.
Absolutely, Beverly. Yeah, learner's mindset. Who else?
I just really appreciate this. I really liked, Michael, what you said about under mindset, focusing about your grandchild. So you kind of enlarge the concepts that we might bring to some of those categories. So it's a simple tool, and yet the way you're approaching it has a kind of integration and working with it. Like we could all just get some kind of tool like that off the internet maybe, but the fact that we're doing it in the group and that it has leadership and experience from you, I think will really help us all, no matter how experienced we might be at trying to help other people. I also really like I've written down a whole bunch of things you said, but showing up versus how I show up, and that really is to me, because being kind of in the rapids right now for me, this time is actually giving me time to get some things done after a huge move and a lot of family trauma stuff. So yeah, I'm very grateful for it. Looking forward to the time.
That's great, Matt. Great, Matt. So I'm going to stop the recording, but if any of you want to hang out, I am, I'll hit this.